Hello all, welcome back to our course on digital accessibility. Today we will discuss about the inclusive design thinking process, and there are three dimensions to this process which we will try to understand. So basically inclusive design process is all about thinking in a different manner and trying to incorporate those thought processes in your design approach. So the first principle or first dimension of inclusive design is to recognize inclusion. How we can do that? Recognizing how design biases and decisions result in exclusion. So we have had a discussion in previous sessions about what accounts for biases, how what are the different reasons biases can come into picture. It may be the commonly perceived rule of the average, it may be ability biases, it may be assumption based designs, it may be non-empathetic start of a design process. So all of these aspects we should try to curb and recognize how design biases and design decisions result in exclusion. So we should try to analyze the root cause of a person's exclusion, and we have discussed some of the tools which can help us in doing that. Empathy mapping can be one of them. Putting the aspects of a person's need on a disability spectrum can be another way of doing that, and putting the needs, the aspirations, the frustrations of the users in order to understand the root cause of why they are feeling excluded from the system is something which can help us recognize exclusion. Then there is this term which we would like to discuss, which is mismatched human interactions. We have had a short discussion about it. We will try to dive into it a little bit more. And this is also part of the first step of inclusive design thinking process, that we should address the mismatched human interactions. And the points of mismatches, the points of exclusion, they help us generate new ideas and inclusive designs. So what are mismatch of interactions? So basically disability or a hindrance occurs when there are mismatched in interactions. What we mean by mismatch, the term mismatch, is that, say for example, there is an intended purpose of a feature in your application or on your product, and some assumptions have been made that the user will be able to utilize this feature or use this functionality in this way. Right? But for example, the user, again we are making an assumption that the user has that ability to interact with that feature of the product in that assumed way at all times. So, but there may be situations where the user is not able to interact with it. The situation may be a permanent hindrance, which is what we are calling a permanent disability. The situation may be a temporary hindrance, which we were calling temporary disability. The situation may be because of external factors or situational disability, and because of some of these reasons they are not able to interact with the feature of the product. So let us try to understand this aspect through a very simple commonly used example. So as designers, it is our role to understand those aspects of mismatch and inquire how our design affects interactions and create mismatches. We have to acknowledge mismatches and take appropriate design decisions so that minimal number of mismatches or no mismatches really happen. Right? So in order to understand what a mismatch would really mean, let us look at this common example of a automatic soap dispenser. I am sure you all might have interacted with this product at some point in your life. And so what is the purpose? That purpose is that there is a sensor, and as soon as you put your hand underneath, the sensor is able to detect that there is some object in present, and it dispenses some amount of liquid soap. So, but in cases where, say for example, what are the assumptions that the designer has made so that this feature can be utilized? So, it also depends on what is the position of this soap dispenser, how high it is placed on the wall, whether there is a space in front of the soap dispenser to really approach the product and extend your hand in front of it. So, all of those aspects, if they are not there, you are assuming that the user will somehow reach the machine and they will be able to dispense. So, all of those things also need to be looked at. The other, and probably those are not part of the product designer's design decision, but also other stakeholders like people who are installing the system on the wall, people, maybe the architect, maybe the electrician, maybe all of the other people who are putting or cleaning the system, right? So, or to refill it when it is empty. Otherwise, if there is no soap to dispense, how will it dispense? So, other than that, from a user's perspective, the reach, the approach, all of that is important. And then also there may be some other limitations. So, for example, in case of a dark background, so for example the light is not there, it is quite dark, will it be able to sense the presence of an object? If it is an IR sensor, which is a light based sensor, will it be able to sense it? If it is a proximity sensor, which is sensing the distance between something which is close to the sensor, then probably it will be able to sense, right? So, all of these aspects, so what are the abilities we are assuming? So, there may be cases where these abilities are not really functioning or available at all, where those mismatches can happen. So, we as designers have to try to minimize these mismatches. Similarly, such situations like short-term injury can affect the usage of such a product or other digital products like a mobile phone or a laptop. So, I think we have discussed this example, and this is a very relevant example, that is why it is kind of recurring in the session. So, think about looking into a bright light or wearing a cast. So, you have this temporary reason because of which the hindrance is occurring, because of which a mismatch is occurring, because of which your ability is not functioning at its best, right? Or it's not functioning the way it is expected to or assumed to be functioning. So, I think as designers we have to be sensitive about these aspects, and this is the first step of the inclusive design thinking process, that recognizing that these are the scenarios in which an exclusion can happen. These are the things which, when we are designing the product, we have to think about them, otherwise an exclusion can happen. Similarly, situational disabilities, which we have discussed, that due to external environmental factors, the abilities may change, right? So, maybe because of the loud crowd, your audio feedback is not audible anymore, or sometimes because a new parent is holding a child, they are forced to interact with your machine or your product with only one hand, while you have assumed that the product will be used using both hands. Or there may be just a sensory overload and your cognitive functioning is hampered or is not at its best. So the workload or the workflow task of even ordering a basic object or a basic product, the number of steps can cause a sensory overload as well. Right, which you may think that okay, otherwise it is assumed that it is okay to deal with so many steps. So I'm sure you might have experienced this also, that if you've had a long overwhelming day, if somebody asks you at the end of the day at say 11:30 p.m. at night, fill this form which has like 10 steps to it, which requires your Aadhaar number, your account number, your this, you have to cross check everything and all of that, it becomes really hard to do it if you have already had an overwhelming day. So moving to the second principle of inclusive design, which is learn from diversity. So now that we have recognized that there are other aspects of the design thinking process itself which can cause exclusion, and it is not just the responsibility or the onus is not just on the user themselves, but also on us as designers. That was the first step, and now we would like to analyze or learn from how different kinds of people behave. So basically we are trying to learn from diverse human adaptations and behavioral patterns, which can help us taking appropriate design decisions so as to minimize exclusion. So of course, in order to learn from diversity, we first have to acknowledge diversity, that there are a diverse set of people and there is differences in user populations, be it anthropometric differences, be it cultural differences, be it context dependent differences, be it ability related differences, be it cognitive differences, IQ related differences, or cultural differences. So it is always helpful that if your design team itself is comprises of a diverse set of people, they would be able to put various perspectives on the table while those design decisions are being taken. The other way, I think we have mentioned it fleetingly before in one of the sessions, is something called as participatory design, where a person with some particular kind of limitation is also part of your design team. So they can participatory design methodology, where when we are creating the diverse design team, we have somebody or an actual representative or an actual user with maybe a type of permanent hindrance or a disability. So they can put those emotional, the context, the aspirational context, as well as the accessibility and usability related frustrations which they face on the table, and that can help design team also understand what ways the state of the art, the existing technologies have been kind of excluding their needs, and how a better design can be created. The other aspect in which we can learn from diversity is human beings' behavior itself. So So human beings are in general the real experts in adapting to diverse situations, right? So I'm sure you all might have heard about the term jugaad, right? And then so how we in our day to day adapt and get the work done despite the hindrances, despite those mismatches, despite those mismatched abilities and expectations, we still get through our day somehow, right? So what are those adaptive measures that humans themselves take? So one way of actually learning it is again through participatory design, getting their viewpoint. The other very useful method in particularly to learn from the adaptive behavior is something which is called shadowing. So where you are just quietly following and observing the person interact with the either your proposed technology or some existing technology, or they're just maneuvering, going about with their day in the context of the problem, then you can kind of try to understand how they are adapting. So this is a very interesting example of how all of us adapt in an everyday situation. So I'm sure you all might have struggled to put a 2-pin plug in a 3-pin socket, right, because of that safety guard. So what do? What is the jugaad that we all do? I'm sure everyone might have done it, right? So when experiences don't serve people the way they should, people adapt. They think of some jugaad but get it done, and it's done in astonishing ways, which can the designers never thought that it would happen, but the users, they do it, right? So I'm sure all of us have really used, stuck that pencil in the earth hole and get through our work, because then the 2-pin plug can be plugged inside. Other ways, of course, is that, say, if I am holding a coffee in my hand as well as a newspaper, how do I open the door, right? So, I mean, all of those aspects, and how do you do it? You use your elbow and try to get in some way. So the idea is again coming from the same point, that in order to learn from users or learn how they adapt, learn from their behavior, learn from the diverse ways they interact with the environment, we have to put people at center. We have to have empathy, which is an important form of the design thinking process itself. We have discussed this in one of the previous sessions, and the tools that we discussed under this section of putting people at center can help you in this second step. So we need to recognize more than just the physical barriers or the interaction related barriers, which is more physiological. I think we also had a discussion about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the interaction related or physiological barriers is at the bottom of the triangle, remember. That needs to be studied, that needs to be addressed, definitely. But we should also try to recognize the motivations, the aspirations, the frustrations of the users as well, in order to create more accessible and more enriching experiences. So one way of doing it is, we have discussed this, that empathy mapping, how to fill this. You have to think about, you have to interview them and maybe fill this based on their responses. What do they think and feel? What do they see in the context? what do they hear, what do they say and do. So the think and feel can tell you about the emotions, what do they say and do can tell you about the adaptations. The frustrations can come from the pain, and aspirations will come from the gain, what they wish to gain from this product. This is just an example of a filled empathy map. You can also try to do this exercise when you are working on your product. You can also think of scenarios, different kinds of abilities and different kinds of special abilities when you are creating a persona, and that would help you come to 3 personas maybe. So one is a permanent disability kind of a persona, the other can be a temporary disability kind of a persona, and the third can be a situational disability kind of a persona. The third principle, now coming to the third step or the third principle of inclusive design thinking, is to solve for one but extend to many. Right? So this also aligns with the universal design thinking, the universal design principles that we had discussed in one of the previous sessions. So we can use those principles as a set of guidelines when we are trying to extend to many, but we also need to understand that the problem solving, can be, we can start looking at it as a individual problem, but we have to extend to many by diversifying its usability, by diversifying its access. So we'll discuss how we can do that. So first is offering choices, right? Choices not just in terms of the opportunities of products, the options in terms of colors or all of that, but also in terms of interaction, right? So how different people interact with the device in similar circumstances, or vice versa, how similar people interact with different circumstances, right? So that would help you understand when we are designing the solution. A single solution may not be able to accommodate all users. So offering choice in terms of choices, either in terms of different solutions or choices in terms of different ways of interaction. So as everyone experiences exclusion as they interact with our designs. So this is an example of what we can do to offer choices. So for example, if the problem statement is, I want to go to second floor. So I want to go to the second floor, that is my problem statement, and these are the different ways or choices which I have to choose from. All of these are solving the problems. All of these can be useful, beneficial in their own ways. Right? So depending on my ability, depending on my situation, I can choose which one to take in order to go to the next floor. So when we are diversifying for more users, it is definitely that more people can benefit. So one may say that, okay, if you are able to install, say, an elevator, what is the need for a staircase, for example? but it's definitely needed. One is, of course, in case of an emergency, staircases are required. But there may be people who are able to walk and they want to use the staircase intentionally. They want to, exercise, they want to reduce weight, they want to be active when they are, roaming about in their office or whatever. So, all of those things need to be thought about. So, designing for people with permanent disabilities by itself, so if we just look at this part of the spectrum, it may be a little bit of a significant constraint, but the resulting design, so for example, we design something which can work for one arm user, which a person with only one hand can operate, it automatically benefits a person who has an arm injury or who is a new parent who is holding a kid in one hand, right? So, and the important part is that and the important part here is that people with permanent disabilities may be in some thousands of numbers. People with temporary disabilities can be around few millions. People with situational difficulties can be around another few millions. So, if your solution can work for all of these, we are looking at a much bigger number of customers or users, potential users, as compared to only people who are permanently disabled or the traditional definition of disability. So, it is also an economic benefit for the organization. It's not really just a pro bono act. So, as we spoke that designing for situations which have constraints may be a little bit difficult, but definitely it is more, the resulting designs can actually benefit more people, the resulting experiences can be much more enriching, the resulting products can be used by a larger chunk of people, hence the profitability can also go up. So, for example, closed captioning was created for the hard of hearing community, but there are many benefits of closed captioning, such as reading in a crowded airport or teaching children how to read. Constraints help us design better. So, there are many such examples that, for example, the high contrast screens were initially made to benefit people with vision impairment, but we today cannot imagine our laptops without high contrast settings because we may want to sit outside and work. Similarly, remote controlled automatic doors, remote controls, email, all of these popular products were initially made as assistive products, but they are very commonly adopted in all user experience as well. So, it is definitely what we are talking about, extending the use case to more people is always beneficial. So, to summarize today's session, we spoke about the 3 dimensions of inclusive design, which are more of a process. So, basically how we can get started with the inclusive design thinking process. The first step is to recognize exclusion. What are the different methods? What are the different aspects of mismatch, of ability biases, of all of these aspects which can contribute to design decisions that can lead to exclusion. The second dimension was to learn from diversity, not just looking at how people are getting excluded, but also how people are getting the job done, how they are adapting to the situation can help us understand and design better solutions which can help them interact with our product in a much better way. We can also involve people with different hindrances or disabilities in our teams. Our teams can be more diverse in order to get perspective from a variety of users on the problem statement. So that is something which contributed to the learn from diversity step. The third dimension is solve for one and extend to many. So what we have to do is we have to solve not just for people who are permanently disabled, but also we are trying to extend it to much wider audience when we are looking at temporary and situational disabilities. So all of our products, all of these aspects are kind of interlinked with each other. Some of the tools also kind of overlap and for each of these dimensions. But all in all, if we incorporate this in our design thinking or product development aspect, the resultant solution can definitely be much more inclusive in its overall interaction as compared to more of an exclusionary product or a specialized product. So that is it for today. Thank you for interacting. See you in the next session.